Okay, so today what I'm going to talk to you about is attachments, and specifically about how attachments to the external, so attachments to relationships, attachments to a job, attachments to different places where we get a sense of our self worth, is what actually is hurting from us and taking away from the love that we can create for our own selves, which basically hold us away from discovering who we really are. If you're someone who's felt that triggered by someone saying to you that, hey, I don't think this is going to work out, or hey, I'm going to be moving away or something else, or maybe we're not meant to be together, I want you to put it in the chat, because if someone else's conversation, if someone else's emotional reaction, if someone else's decision about any situation, especially about a relationship with us, is what massively triggers us, then that's telling us how much our sense of emotional wellness is attached to the other person. I used to be the same. And if we get our sense of validation, if we get our sense of self-worth, if we get our sense of who we are based on how we're making other people feel, based on how other people around us appreciate, validate, or recognize us, we are attached to their reactions. We are attached to their emotional disposition. And this is ultimately what causes us to get into mechanisms like people pleasing, codependency, self-abandonment, because right now for us, what's really valuable is how the other person is feeling, and especially, listen to this really carefully, how the other person is feeling about us. If it's so important for us how our partner is feeling about the relationship, how they're feeling about us, to the extent that we forget how we are feeling, listen to this again, right? I'm going to rephrase this again. If we're constantly focusing on how our partner's feeling, how the relationship is going, so much so that we've forgotten how we're really feeling, then we have now abandoned ourselves for the relationship. We've now abandoned ourselves for the partner. We've now abandoned ourselves for the other person. We will internalize how someone else is feeling if we don't know how to fully love and focus on ourselves. I'm going to repeat that. We will internalize and take what somebody else is feeling personally if we don't have a strong enough image of self-love for ourselves. How this happens is because this is what the ego does in this concept of self-abandonment, where it tries to focus on the external, tries to focus on a partner, tries to focus on a job, tries to focus on how we look to society, tries to focus on the validation, etc., that we're getting, because our sense of internal recognition, our sense of internal love is very, very poor. It's very low because of our wounds. Now, what are these wounds? You're probably thinking that, yeah, what the fuck are these wounds that tell me that, that don't let me focus on myself and only get me to focus on everybody else? If you're growing up as a little child, it is so important for you to create your identity. How you create your identity of yourself is based on how the world around you is treating you. This is a psychological concept called neuroception. Because if you think about it, a child has no way of determining who they are, right? What they're about, which is why you can take a brown baby like me and you put a child like a brown baby next to other babies who may be black, white, or whatever other fucking color. The babies will not know how to distinguish between each other. So they love and play and connect as if there is no boundaries between them. So how does this baby now discover who they really are? How do they even know they're brown or black or white? How do they know the language they speak, the nationality or whatever? All of this comes from their conditioning. It comes from the environment that they're exposed to. So now a baby starts to, as they grow up, discover who they are based on observing how the environment treats them. Now imagine if you're in an environment where your needs are not what's prioritized as a little baby, because you can't go and work for yourself. You can't take your little suitcase like Boss Baby if you watch the movie and go make yourself millions. You can't take care of yourself. You can't even wipe your own ass. So you need someone to be able to take care of your needs of, primarily we talk about food, shelter, clothing, etc., but the emotional needs. And so most of us belonged to environments or surroundings where our parents or caregivers were so loaded with their own wounds, were so loaded with their own traumas, their own stories, their own conditioning, that those became a priority more than meeting our maximum emotional needs. So when your parents or your caregivers, and they did it unconsciously, they weren't consciously trying to say, hey, I don't want to be really emotional because my granddad used to beat the fuck out of me, so I'm not going to give you a hug. But what's important here is not them, it's how you absorb their energy. And so when they're around you, you're a little baby who just wants love, who just wants caring, who just wants a hug. So you run up to your emotionally unavailable parent, who you don't know is emotionally unavailable because you're a fucking kid and like you have no idea about this. You run up to them and you want a hug. You want them to pick you up and hold you. You want them to soothe you. You want them to rub your back. You want them to give you a kiss. You want them to take you to play. And yet, in each of these moments, you're met with not being able to do it. So what you're met with is actually rejection. That's your first idea of fucking rejection. Remember this. I'm going to connect this to your present and your future in just a second. Then you now start to internally process this as being, I'm not good enough. Because a child doesn't have a developed forebrain. This is all neuroscience. You can study it. They only have the hindbrain, which is about survival. It's the reptilian brain. So they don't know how to distinguish and say, oh yeah, I'm like this, and this. They just know who they are based on what the world is giving them. So if they go up to someone and ask for love and someone doesn't know how to give them love, a child doesn't think, oh yeah, of course this makes sense because my dad is emotionally unavailable. He went and fought the war and people told him to flush his emotions down the toilet. His granddad told him, like, you're a fucking Nancy, like, don't fucking, show me your emotions. Of course this makes sense. But as a child, you don't fucking know that. You can't understand it. All you see is, I want love and I didn't get it, so something must be up with me. Now, this is a one-time thing. But imagine if you continuously ask for love in different ways. One of the ways you ask for love that you may not even have realized is when you come back from school with a C on your report card. For you, as a child, love at that point is still unconditional. And so you come back home and you're happy and you don't know what's wrong, but your mom looks at it and she looks at it and says, like, you got a C? Like, what the fuck is this? Like, what's wrong with you? Why couldn't you get an A? And immediately you get reprimanded. You now start to think, wow, if I am not intelligent enough, if I'm not working hard enough, if I'm not smart enough, then not only do I not get love, I get punished. Fast forward 2 weeks, maybe you come back with an A. The same mother's emotions have completely changed. At this point, she's so validating. She's so accepting. She's like, oh my God, you got an A. That's amazing. Let's go out to dinner. Let's tell daddy. Let's put it on the fridge. You have now received your first dose of conditional love, where now you have performed for someone's validation. That's your first dose of receiving conditional love. Now, if this happens multiple times, which it does, because that conditional love doesn't only happen when you get an A. It happens if you don't go to church or you do go to church. It happens if you dress a way or you don't dress a certain way. It happens if you are impolite or polite to like family members or whatever. For example, your parents take you to a guest house and they're like, if someone asks you for anything, just say no thank you. And you're like, but maybe I want something. And they're like, no, just say no thank you politely. And you're like, okay, I guess I have to reject myself and like what I really want just to be a people pleaser in that moment. And so in that space, you have now recognized already for yourself that I am not worthy enough just to have what I want or to be loved as I am. I have to fit in a certain box. When this goes on many times over a period of time in your life, this now becomes conditioning. This now becomes your idea of how you have to perform for love, how you have to get love, how you receive love. But if you listen to every circumstance I brought up, they were all in the external. All those moments, getting an A and a C, mom's love, going to a guest house and getting approval, guest love or parents love, going to church or whatever, getting society's validation and your families or whoever else. So we are taught as human beings through a very unconditional, a very unconscious, your parents don't do this consciously, by the way, I want to let you know. It's a very unconscious way of them projecting onto you conditioning from society, from the fucking generations. It's a very unconscious way of controlling your children, controlling your circumstances so that you can fit into the box that they are used to. But no one ever teaches us or sits down with us and says, you are special just because you're you. Even with your C, you're so special. With your A, you're equally special. There's nothing that's different to me whether you get a C or an A. Both of them are so important and they're so valuable. And so what I want you to know is whether you get a C, whether you get a B, whether you get anything, you are so special. I want you to see, what do you want to do? How do you want to be? How do you want to grow? In an ideal world, they would provide us with unconditional love. Now, how can someone provide you with unconditional love if they have healed their own trauma conditions? But most of our parents came from a time when even talking about your emotions was so shamed, right? So they couldn't even like discover, why am I hurting so much? What am I even trying to work with? When this comes back now to you as you grow up, you are unconsciously attached to the external. And that is how you ultimately will choose your attachment style based on like the circumstance. Because of our conditioning, we've realized the external is the source of my love and validation. And if I don't change that thought process, and think the internal should be the source of my love and validation, then I'm constantly going to be attached to the external. And so if my partner is in a bad mood, and so you start to think now, shit, I need to do something to change my partner's mood. That's what people pleasing starts with. Is saying, I need to do something so they feel better, not just because they can feel better, but I need to do something so they feel better so that they are capable of loving me more. It's actually an unconscious method of manipulation. It's very unconscious, but it's again from the same fact that we're attached to the external. Any of those concepts where I feel like I'm going to be rejected or abandoned, I feel so threatened. You're saying, yeah, it's okay, this is my attachment. How do I work through it? It's by learning to change your focal point from the external to the internal. To change your focal point from attaching to the trigger to instead now to focus back on you and what you're going through is to pause. This is an inner work, a nervous system magical tool that I want to give you, the value of pause. So when you get triggered, when you get challenged, and you're going to feel rejected or abandoned, just pause. Before you focus and let your mind run down that road of hating them or hating yourself, just pause. Breathe. Take 2 to 3 minutes. Count your breaths if you like. Count 5 seconds in, count 5 seconds out. Sounds so stupid and easy, right? And you're like, yeah, I probably want like something that's really complicated and psychological in this moment to heal me, but this is the best thing you can do. Why? Because it's calming down your nervous system. And your nervous system is what has stitched inside of it all the traumas, all the stories, all of the stuff that you're carrying from your past. And I talked about that initial moment in your life where you wanted love and then someone was just not able to give it to you and you thought it was rejection. That's stitched into your nervous system. And so to be able to calm down this nervous system and say, hey, let's just breathe for a second. Let's just relax. What the past is not repeating itself. When you calm down that nervous system, you relax, you'll notice you can disconnect from your attachment a lot easier. You can disconnect from the story that you've been told or that you believe in your head a lot easier because your nervous system is where it's actually like stored, bringing up that like trauma and that fear. So when you calm down that nervous system, you actually calm down the story and you tell yourself, okay, it's not actually happening right now. Then when you calm down, you recognize that, okay, you move into something that it's a tool I give on the gauntlet called the witness perspective, where you can now witness the trigger or the person and you witness yourself as separate entities, which means you're looking at it as a third person and you can see yourself and you're like, okay, I can see myself emotionally reacting to that person, but I need to understand why my emotional reaction is even happening. Now you're going internal. When you're going internal, you're unconsciously detaching from the external. It's incredibly powerful in terms of conflict. When someone's bringing up conflict to you in a partnership, friendship, work, or anything, you don't take that and swallow it. You're disconnecting from what they're doing it and you're stepping into how you're really feeling. There's a big difference. There's a big difference between how someone's trying to make you feel and what you're actually feeling. Both of them may look like the same sometimes, just to let you guys know, but that's because you're surrendering your power of how you really want to and should feel to them. So here's what something super powerful I'm going to tell you today. There's a big difference between how someone wants to make you feel and how you can actually feel. But there can only be a difference between these two if you have a strong sense of internal regulation, control, integrity, etc. That's when you can start owning how you feel and what you're really going to go through. But that's also how you start to disconnect from your attachments. So if you have a strong attachment, even if it's to someone who's in your life, like you can detach from a partner and from a child, doesn't mean that you're not in a relationship with them. It just means now you are realizing the power you have as an individual and you're separating from the hold that they have over you as like your partner or your kid or whatever else. And it's so powerful because now the two of you will start rising as individuals in a relationship. And the two of you, as you grow and rise as individuals in a relationship, will connect on a much higher level. You won't be triggered with shit that's down here. You won't try to pull each other down here. You'll start growing to the state because both of you are rising as individuals. Hey, and welcome to the Inner Yats YouTube page. If you like our content, make sure you click the like and the subscribe button so that you get more of these amazing videos that keep coming your way.